listed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I move to approve items, item number 3, case number TA 2020-03003 on today's consent agenda based on evidence in the record, including the application, the staff report, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff reports with conditions of approval as listed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to the regular agenda. There are two types of cases that will be heard today, quasi-judicial and legislative. I will outline the procedures for each hearing at the beginning of the respective hearings. First up are procedures for quasi-judicial hearings, Level 2 cases. All Level 2 cases, such as flexible development, are considered quasi-judicial hearings. In quasi-judicial hearings, the Community Development Board reviews the application, the staff report, correspondence, and all evidence presented today and makes a final decision subject to appeal. This board has previously qualified all of the city staff who will testify as experts in their area of professional training, education, and experience. The list of city staff experts and their resumes are in the handbook on the podium near the entry door. Any other professionals who desire to be qualified as an expert witness shall show request at the beginning of the case and present a resume to each board member. The board shall determine whether or not to qualify the person as an expert and in what field of study. At the beginning of each Level 2 case, I will ask for anyone who wishes to request party status to come forward and state your reasons. Party status may be granted if the person requesting such status demonstrates that he or she is a substantially effective person. The board will then determine whether or not to grant party status. Then the case will proceed as follows. Request for party status. Presentation by Planning and Development staff, 10 minutes maximum. Presentation by the applicant, 10 minutes max. Presentation by persons with party status, 5 minutes per party maximum. Cross-examination of witnesses by Planning and Development staff, cross-examination of witnesses by applicant, cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status. Comments by the public, 3 minutes per person. Closing remarks by the Planning and Development staff, 3 minutes maximum. Closing remarks by persons granted party status, 3 minutes maximum. Closing remarks by applicant, 3 minutes maximum. Closing of the public hearing, discussion and vote by the board. And our first Level 2 case will be the first item pulled off consent. Which is case FLD 2020-03006 at 1720 Overbrook Avenue. The owner is City of Clearwater. The agent is Brian Uggs. Location is 4.12 acres located on the south side of Overbrook Avenue, approximately 500 feet west of North Betty Lane. The CDB is reviewing a proposed public transportation facility as a comprehensive infill redevelopment project in the commercial district for a portion of the property. Is anyone in the audience, would anyone in the audience like to request party status on this case? If so, raise your hand. Okay, please come to the podium and state and spell your name and give your address, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David J., and my address 2856 Shady Oak Court in Clearwater, Florida. I own the 1.4 acres of land that's about 120 feet from the proposed Jolly Trolley transportation facility. And my land is landlocked with no access.
We're just handling party status right now. So you'll be free to speak in a second, but were you notified of this meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the board? No?
Grant party status.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is anyone else here for party status? Okay. The board has granted party status to David J. for this case. The granting of party status entitles you to these additional rights: personally testify, present evidence by documentary submittal, present witnesses, conduct cross-examination of any witnesses, present argument appeal the decision of the board to a hearing officer and/or to circuit court. Okay, we will now have the presentation by planning and development staff.
Good afternoon. I'm Ellen Crandall with Planning and Development. I am presenting on behalf of Melissa Hawk-Baker, the case planner, who is unable to be here today. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Excellent.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, before Ms. Crandall begins, Michael Fulwino, Assistant City Attorney, Planning Development Attorney. We would just move, the city would move to have Ms. Crandall accepted as an expert on the matters about she testified to.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The proposal before you today is located at 1720 Overbrook. The project area is a portion of this site. Generally, it's the western half of the property. The eastern half is currently developed with a fire station. The property is zoned commercial with an underlined future land use of commercial general. The surrounding properties to the south are zoned low, medium density residential. The properties to the north are largely in unincorporated Pinellas County, though they are in the City of Clearwater service area. They have an underlying future land use of commercial general. The proposal before you today is to construct a public transportation facility for the Jolly Trolley, including admin offices, a workshop, and parking for the trolleys. Public transportation facility is listed in the commercial zoning district as a level 1 flexible standard development use. However, today it is being reviewed as a comprehensive infill redevelopment project due to the requested maximum height of 25 feet. The proposal includes setbacks of 25 feet on the front, 10-foot sides, and a 20-foot rear setback, which meet or exceed the setbacks for most of the uses in the commercial zoning district. So if you can see my mouse? Yes. So this is Overbrook here towards the front. This is the proposed office administrative buildings, the trolley parking, and then the workshop. So the abutting single-family homes are located to the rear, and a 20-foot setback is proposed to parking and with landscaping and a wall. This shows the proposed landscape plan, which includes a 15-foot front landscape buffer, 10-foot side, and a 20-foot rear landscape buffer. The admin building, which is located towards the front near Overbrook, is shown here. Generally, it has a maximum height of 20 feet to the top of the entry element, which is the pitched roof element here, and 14 feet to the flat roof for the remainder of the building. In the commercial district, as a comprehensive infill redevelopment project, the maximum height is not listed. However, for most uses as a level 2, the maximum height ranges from 25 to 50 feet. As I said, this project is requesting a maximum height of 25 feet, and that is to the top of a flat roof for the workshop building, as shown here. The remainder of the buildings are generally less than 25 feet, between 13 and 19 feet in height to a flat roof. As a comprehensive infill redevelopment project, the proposed buildings include distinctive roof elements, a variety of building facade materials, varying fenestrations, and use of architectural details such as awnings. Further, the applicant is in agreement of a condition of approval, specifically number 5, that the fence along the rear property line shall be an 8-foot to provide the maximum amount of screening. This is also consistent with the fire station to the east, which has an 8-foot PVC fence. And the condition also details the high-quality fence, and that will be consistent throughout the remainder of the project. That'll be included in the front and incorporated into the landscaping. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
One question. Did I understand correctly, if the building was less than 25 feet, it could be a staff level approval?
So for a public transportation facility, it's listed as a use in the commercial district as the level 1 flexible standard with a maximum height of 10 feet.
10 feet, okay.
10 feet.
So the only reason it's coming before the board is for the height.
Correct. It came before the board for the height greater than 10 feet. And then also during the review, staff asked the applicant if they would do a taller fence, the 8-foot fence along the rear. That also requires flexibility, but that could have been, I believe that could be requested also through a level 1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up is presentation by the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I start my time, I'd like to get my expert witnesses certified, if that's okay with the
Okay.
board. I have two. Typically, I hand out documents, but due to the current health crisis, I'm not going to do that. So if you need to see anything or want me to slow down, just let me know. Hopefully, we can show everything on the Elmo. The first expert is architect Emily Pano. She is a licensed architect and works for Clark & Clark and provided the architectural designs for this building. I'd like to have her certified as an expert in architecture.
Okay,
So moved.
motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Sure. Pano.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Armstead, I'm going to ask you to provide one copy of that resume to the clerk for inclusion in the record.
Absolutely will do. And the second one is Mr. Robert Pergolesi, AICP, and I'd ask for him to be certified as an expert in areas of planning and transportation planning.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Brian, I'm 625 4th Street on behalf of the applicant, which is the Jolly Trolley, as the long-term lessee of the city of Clearwater. The city of Clearwater owns this property. The trolley is standing in the shoes of the city of Clearwater as a long-term lessee of the property. As Ms. Crandall noted, this property is zoned commercial, and this use is a permitted level 1 use, public transportation facility in the commercial district. Nothing about the use is before you in terms of whether the use itself is compatible or consistent, because that use has been legislatively created as a level 1 approval by the city council and the prior city commission. So really what's before this board today is a quasi-judicial decision about the flexibility requested as to the height of the maintenance building, which is 25 feet, and the staff recommendation and the condition we're agreeing to, which is the height of the decorative wall on the rear of the property, which is 8 feet. I do want to say just a word about why are we here? How did we get here? The Jolly Trolley currently leases property from the Clearwater Gas System at 401 Myrtle. As you probably know, Clearwater Gas is expanding their footprint on that property, and about 2 years ago, they asked the Jolly Trolley to make plans to vacate as the city needs that property. So for the past 2 years, the Jolly Trolley has been working with the city to locate a sufficient and appropriate alternative site to make sure the Jolly Trolley stays in Clearwater. Since 1982, the Jolly Trolley has been an indelible part of the fabric of our community, providing alternative transportation not just for the citizens of Clearwater, but also for all of North Pinellas County now, due to the trust that's been placed in it by the PSTA. The Jolly Trolley has long been an alternative use of transportation to reduce emissions, reduce cars and traffic from the road, which clearly is a benefit to the community. And it's important that the Jolly Trolley stay in Clearwater and not be forced to go somewhere else. This is the long-term lease that was unanimously approved by the Clearwater City Council on February 6th for the public transportation facility. It's a 25-year lease. As part of that lease, the city hired an environmental attorney, Bill Pence. The city conducted a environmental phase 1, and the Jolly Trolley commissioned and paid for UES to do an additional soil and groundwater assessment. All of that, all of those environmental issues have been taken into consideration in the lease and by the council, and it's the city's opinion and it's our opinion that this project is an environmental improvement over what's currently there. In other words, what's currently there will be improved in terms of environmental remediation and environmental care and maintenance of the property based on even just leaving it alone as is. I'm going to ask Mr. Pergolesi to speak more specifically to the mitigation in terms of the excess landscape buffering and excess things that exceed the code. I'm still trying to figure out how to position this on the Elmo, but I just wanted to point out briefly, as Ms. Crandall pointed out, this is the rear of the property, and the single-family homes are back here. This maintenance building is 75 feet set back from the property line, and the homes are about 20 feet approximately set back from their property line. So we're talking about 90 feet from building to other building. This is only going to be operated during normal business hours, and it is enclosed. The only work that's done in here is tire replacement, oil changes, and light engine work. There's no painting, there's nothing like that, and any heavy engine work is sent out. The trolleys are parked in the center of the property and will be screened by the maintenance building, the 8-foot wall, and of course Overbrook is over here and the office is here. So I did want to address, we have a 20-foot landscaping buffer, 75 feet setback from property line, and about 90 feet setback from those single-family homes.
Good afternoon, Robert Pergolesi with Gulf Coast Consulting, AICP certified planner. As Brian mentioned, we're here for public transportation facility, which is a permitted use in the flexible standard development section of the code. The Jolly Trolley is their administrative offices and workshop warehouse for minor repairs on their vehicles. It's consistent with the CG land use of the comprehensive plan, and that offices are permitted primary use. Offices are also consistent with the commercial zoning of the property. This project is consistent with several comp plan policies. I won't go into them due to time, but most of them are regarding infill development. Want to hit on the building, if you can see. This is the proposed maintenance facility. That is the 25-foot high building. As Brian mentioned, it's a one-story building, and it is 74 feet from the property line. And as part of that buffer from the residential homes, which there are 3 homes that directly abut our property and that are zoned LNDR. We've got a 20-foot landscape buffer, and as part of our DRC review, the 20-foot landscape buffer includes shade trees. And then, of course, there's the 8-foot, what's going to be an 8-foot high decorative fence that Ms. Panna will talk about more. So we'll get to the wall is going to be consistent with the height of the wall of the fire station. That was one of the reasons that staff asked for 8-foot high, or required 8-foot high, after we had proposed 6. I want to touch on traffic a little bit. Traffic is minimal from this project. I provided a traffic assessment that was part of the submittal, and the peak hour traffic from this project falls well below the threshold for a detailed traffic analysis, which is 51 trips. We've estimated our peak hour traffic to be between 5 and 10 trips. So with that, we believe that we're consistent with the comp plan and the code. And I'll ask Ms. Pano to discuss the details of the rear wall on the rear buffer.
The design of the 8-foot high rear decorative wall helps to buffer the adjacent residential neighborhood. The height of the decorative wall is compatible with the fence height of the neighboring fire station. The wall will be constructed of masonry piers, as you can see on the Elmo, and horizontal wood look infill panels. The fence ties into the design of the Jolly Trolley buildings and creates a warm, residential-like fence for the neighbors. The single-story administration and workshop buildings incorporate architectural elements like changes of height, awnings, color, pattern, and texture to create visual interest. The admin building uses a wood-look material at the entry to add warmth, creating a more residential aesthetic. The wood-look material gives a nod to the surrounding neighborhoods, while the corner glass creates an inviting entry. The building changes planes through a recess on the north side and an extension to the main facade on the east side. The design of the buildings and the fence were thoughtfully planned to relate to the fire station and the adjacent neighborhood behind, while giving Jolly Trolley its own identity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pano and Mr. Pergolesi. So as we've stated, the use-specific criteria have all been met and would have been approved as a level 1 approval by the staff, but for the 25 feet in height for the maintenance building and the 20 feet in height from the administrative building. Again, the maintenance building is significantly set back from the property line and from the abutting homes, and also the landscape buffer of 20 feet and the 8-foot decorative wall, which will match the height of the current fire station, which is next door, are all mitigating factors that we think meet and exceed all of the code requirements for approval. And again, just to reiterate, I want to thank the staff, the city attorney, city's outside counsel, Mr. Pence, and everyone from the planning department, Melissa, Hockbaker, Ella, and Gina, for sitting down with us over a long period of time, of just about 2 years in October, to try to find an appropriate site to keep the Jolly Trolley in Clearwater, but to make sure that that Clearwater gas building can be freed up and let the city expand there and use that for their purposes. So at that point, we'll just answer any questions that you have. I think we've said everything we need to say.
I do have a question about the wall. I noticed that you do have some large columns. There's some very large oaks along the back of the property where the wall's going to be. So I presume that the applicant would be working with the city arborist and locating where those columns land, so we're not too close to the structural roots of the trees.
Absolutely, but I don't know, anybody want to address that more specifically?
Sure, so we will locate the masonry piers around the oaks with the arborist, but the fence was also designed with a raised system to allow for water and drainage underneath the fence, as well as the roots to grow underneath.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Next up is the presentation by persons with party status. Mr. J.
So I'll have to figure out how to put this. There we go.
It looks good.
Okay, so the proposed property, Jolly Trolley. I want to start out first by saying, as a lifelong resident of Clearwater, it's a pleasure to see this being brought out of functional and economic obsolescence. Having been on the several boards myself in the brownfield, I'm pleased with this project overall. My concern and my future concern and my current concern is Pineland Drive, right here, which is between the city and the city. This is the property my family owns, and currently the property is landlocked. Without having to sue the city, which is what I've been told by the city manager and by the city real estate services director, that's the only way I can acquire access to my property. So, the right-of-way is Pineland Drive. It's 30 feet. To the best of my knowledge, according to my engineer, it should be 50 feet. And so I want this to be on record that should we go in the future, we have to take 10 feet from this side for the city, and 10 feet on this side for the city, as well as ingress and egress on the adjacent city property so that I can have access to my own property, which, of course, is landlocked. I'm asking the city now for access in conjunction with this project for future reference. As I said, in the past, I've had to ask the city to address this and have been told by the manager and real estate services coordinator that I'll need to sue. I don't want to sue the city of Clearwater. I'd rather work with the city to see, to possibly buy this property rather than make me sue to gain access to my property. So I'd like to thank you for your time and hearing me today. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions?
Do you currently have any access easements over any of those properties?
No.
Has there ever been any there?
Apparently, this property is about 90 years old, and this road has been here, and it's never been given access. Even when the Stevenson subdivision was built, there was never any ingress and egress deeded.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is cross-examination of witnesses by planning and development staff. Okay, we have none. Cross-examination of witnesses by applicant?
No, thank you.
No. Cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status? Okay. Comments by the public?
There's one back there.
Okay. Please come to the podium. Okay. Please state your name and spell your name and provide your address, please.
Absolutely. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Don Ewing. My address is 600 Cleveland Street, Clearwater, Florida. I'd like to speak to you today as an Island Estates resident who has a very fond memory of the Jolly Trolley over the last 20 years, I would say. We believe that the Jolly Trolley is a great representative of our community to the tourism community as well as our local residents. I'm here to speak in favor of your approval for this application for the relocation of the community asset Jolly Trolley Transportation of Clearwater to a consolidated headquarters on Overbrook Street. Staff has researched the application and reviewed the goals, objectives, and policies of the City of Clearwater and deemed this project favorable to recommend moving forward. The new facility will house a centralized administration and maintenance facility, as has been pointed out already, which is good because they operate from two different facilities today, and it's time-consuming to get back and forth. Jolly Trolley's facility should fit well in the area as the proposed lot is a vacant landfill surrounded on one side, as pointed out, automotive shops across the street, a fire station to the right, an empty lot to the west, and the community to the south. JT management and staff care a lot about their image in the community and are great stewards of their trade. Their secret of success is that they believe they offer a friendly tourist transportation service versus the city bus and care deeply about the environment and their neighbors. Jolly Trolley will invest in an attractive, compatible facility like the fire station next door on the adjacent portion of the lot. I'd like to lift a couple of things from the staff report to speak about. The proposed development of the public transportation facility is in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the adjacent properties. The proposed development meets all CDC requirements for maximum development potential and minimum standard use for development parameters. The proposed development will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood. Of the proposed use of the buildings will have an increased setbacks from all property lines, as the architect pointed out, with substantial landscape buffers. The proposed development is designed to minimize traffic congestion and demonstrated by the traffic demand that Mr. Pergozzi referred to in the study, and has a negligible impact on traffic generation and will not affect the level of service on the adjacent roads, which are classified as collectors in the comprehensive plan. In closing, as a resident of the Island Estates and a supporter of the Jolly Trolley, I ask for your approval of this comprehensive infill redevelopment project for the Jolly Trolley Transportation of Clearwater's relocation headquarters. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would the next member of the public please come to the podium? Please state your name.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Nixon. N-I-X-O-N. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to talk before this board. My name is Alexandra Nixon, as I just stated, and I am here as a concerned resident and president of the Spring Branch Neighborhood Association, which borders our to the south Sunset Point. So we're actually located just a few blocks north of the proposed location. The reason we are intervening today is because Spring Branch Neighborhood Association has adopted State Street Park which is home to part of Spring Branch, which is a tributary of Stevenson Creek. And therefore, we are involved as part of our mission in the stewardship of Spring Branch and Stevenson Creek to ensure that it continues to be a preserved area. And we are concerned by the impact a maintenance and storage transportation facility that is so close to Stevenson Creek may have both on the environment and on the surrounding neighborhood. We already expressed our concerns in our letter to you dated February 6th, and I will now leave the floor to our Vice President, Spring Branch and Neighborhoods Association Vice President Jared Leone, who will make a more thorough presentation of the various points to be considered before approving this location for this particular development. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm leaving the floor to my Vice President.
Thank you.
I brought some documents and if you don't mind, I'll take my mask off for a moment. We'll speak. So, thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Jared Leone. I'm a resident of the city and also... Yeah, I was out back. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and, thank you for your time. My name is Jared. I am a resident of the city, and I also serve as the Vice President of Spring Branch Neighborhood Association, which is near the proposed development. Now, this might not directly affect me, but for many of the people who it does, they don't know what's happening. And I took a few moments to examine the request and have shared with you, well, I have here to share with you, but the request and some of the relevant definitions from the city's development code. The proposed Jolly Trolley Operations Center is not consistent with the goals, general purpose, intent, and basic planning objectives outlined in the city's code. Putting a transportation facility in a neighborhood is far from innovative, it's incompatible. Using the comprehensive infill, redevelopment zoning feels more like a way to skirt development rules rather than follow them. The development offers no economic or other benefit to the citizens as a whole, let alone the ones who live directly nearby, who will be adversely affected. The adjacent and adjoining land uses are low, medium, residential, and preservation. There is light commercial development across the street in an unincorporated portion of the city, but there's no similar development in the immediate area. There's several small commercial parcels that development groups have in the last year, and the larger commercial property that development groups have expressed interest in developing as residential or apartments, but what's the likelihood of future highest best use there if a transportation facility is across the street? The property also borders environmentally sensitive land, the Stevenson Creek watershed, which is zone preservation, and according to city staff, it would not be an environmental improvement. At best, it would be a break-even. While this parcel is listed as commercial, it is an undeniably residential neighborhood otherwise. Clearly, the purpose and intent of commercial district designation is to give residents access to goods and services without adversely impacting the integrity of the neighborhood, and that's according to the Muni Code definition. While the Jolly Trolley might offer services between its beach and coastal routes, there are no plans to offer stops in the neighborhood. Rather, these trolleys will come and go multiple times a day throughout the neighborhood to get to the main roads it needs to access its routes. Because the Jolly Trolley has no plans to pick up riders from here, it does not meet the definition of a transportation facility. This proposed development is where equipment will be stored and its administrative offices will be. Based on the transportation facility definition, the site plans and proposed development location bordering residential zoning is also not compatible. The structure will be viewable by the handful of residentially zoned properties to the south, as well as the ones to the north. Lighting surrounding the building will undoubtedly be cast upon these homes. In addition to lighting, there will be noise and traffic from the trolleys and employees getting to work. A maintenance bay where repairs, including oil and tire changes, will be done. We'll likely use impact wrenches and other equipment that makes noise. The coming and going of trolleys multiple times a day as drivers switch shifts, as well as additional traffic from employees throughout the day, would undoubtedly be an adverse impact to a residential neighborhood, regardless of what the traffic study says. And there's also a nearby elementary school. The proposed development is incompatible with the adjacent land uses and would substantially alter the essential use characteristics of the neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I can submit this to...
there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak?
There's no more out here.
Oh, there is one more in the room, for the record. Please come to the podium and state your name.
My name is Orlando Dorsey, and I'm an advocate for the Jolly Trolley. I've been riding the trolley for 10 years, 8 years before I even moved to Florida. The trolley was a pertinent part. The minute I found out there was a way to get over this bridge to Clearwater without having to drive my car, the trolley became my method of use. I know they've been looking for space for 2 years. I've heard about the environmental studies versus the impact the gentleman just mentioned. I don't see them as being a true issue. And I would love to see the Jolly Trolley get a new home after being here in Clearwater for 30 plus years. I don't think that there have been any noise complaints or things from where the current shop is located. So I don't see it'll be even further away from the residential areas where it's going to be located now. And that's all I have to say today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Rosemary Windsor, 410 North Myrtle in Clearwater. And thank you for allowing me to speak as well. And I think I really want to speak on a different perspective. I mean, Brian went through and he talked about how that, we've been into the city building now for 8 years. Clearwater Gas has been a wonderful landlord for us as far as giving us space to park our trolleys. Once if they started their renovations, they did give us adequate notice of saying you have to vacate the property. We are coming up to that point to where that we do need to vacate it. We have been in negotiations with the city for just about almost 2 years at this point. We do want to stay in the Clearwater area. We feel like that we have been an icon. When people talk about Clearwater, we're one of those icons that do come up, the red and yellow trolleys. Doesn't matter where you are in Pinellas County, if there's a trolley out there, everybody names it the Jolly Trolley because we have built that. Our name even specifies it, Jolly Trolley Transportation of Clearwater. So we do want to stay into the area. I really want to talk a little bit about the community because I know that there is concern again about wanting to go into a residential neighborhood. 2 of our locations, as has been mentioned, we have one that is in the Greenwood area. We've been there for probably almost about 2 decades now that we rent a property there that our maintenance shop is in. We are considered a good neighbor. We've never received complaints from the people in the neighborhood. We try to help them out if somebody needs air in their tires, if they need something in the area, we try to be just a good neighbor to them as well. When we moved into the location 8 years ago at 410 North Myrtle, we got feedback from the residents that they thought that we were a good neighbor because we kind of cut down on some of the traffic and some of the homelessness that had been going on in that area. So for us, we pride ourselves in being not only a good business partner, but a good partner overall. We try to work our hardest to keep everybody in compatibility to what we have and try to be a good citizen. I don't see us being any different when we take a look at the new location on Overbrook. We propose to be exactly the same to where we provide good service and we also provide ourselves as a good neighbor. So I thank you very much. I look forward and hope that you will support us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, we will now have our closing remarks by the Planning and Development staff. Okay, no closing remarks by the Planning and Development staff. Closing remarks by persons granted party status. Okay? No remarks. Closing remarks by applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be as brief as I can to address some of the issues that were raised. I just want to reiterate that this process has been a significant amount of time, due diligence, and resources for both the city, who hired an outside environmental attorney, Bill Pence, and the Jolly Trolley. Significant due diligence has gone into the environmental pre-existing conditions and the environmental impact and mitigation that this project will actually provide. And again, it's built into the lease. And that's publicly available for everyone, which was unanimously approved by the City Council back in February of 2020. Also wanted to address the fact that, to my knowledge, we haven't received any objections or concerns from any of these owners of these single-family homes, who are going to be the ones that, theoretically, would be the ones that would be most concerned about the development. But those concerns have been taken into consideration with the significant landscaping, the significant building setback, and the decorative wall that will be matching the fire station wall. I also wanted, as Mr. Dorsey and Ms. Windsor pointed out, we currently operate at 410 Myrtle across the street from some single-family homes on Hart Street and Vine Avenue, and we've never had any complaints or issues with the operation of the building. Finally, I just wanted to ask Mr. Pergolesi again to come up very briefly and address some of the stormwater issues and how that's going to be addressed and cleaned, just in case there are any other concerns related to the environmental impacts. Thank you, Mr. Pergolesi.
Robert Pergolesi for the record. Our preliminary site plan, which was recommended for approval by staff, includes stormwater pond in the southeastern corner. Also includes stormwater ponds up along Overbrook, which would drain into Overbrook Avenue. As you know, we have to meet city drainage criteria as well as Swift Point drainage criteria, so we wouldn't be discharging any water onto our neighbor's property.
Thank you, Robert. If you have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them, but I believe that the competent substantial evidence is before you from both the staff report, the application, and the expert testimony to approve the very, very minor height variance and obviously the very minor decorative wall height variance, which is going to be a benefit to the neighbors and not a detriment. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have one question. I think it's probably going to be more directed at staff, but maybe you can answer. There was one question raised as to whether this is considered a compatible use as a facilities, transportation facility element within the commercial district. I believe it is. Can staff just confirm that is in fact the interpretation of this facility?
Gina Clayton, Planning and Development. I didn't quite catch your question.
Is it maybe my math? There was a question raised as to whether this is in fact a transportation facility, which would be compatible in the commercial district since it's a maintenance facility, which I also believe is compatible. I just wanted to verify there isn't a question as to its conformity with the code.
Right, well, I think that it is a transportation facility. It has offices, it has, the location for the buses to be stored there, and so we thought that it met the definition. It meets the underlying future land uses, which allows those type of uses too, which is another consideration for comprehensive infill redevelopment projects.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now have the closing of the public hearing, discussion and vote by the board. Would you like to start, Elizabeth?
My only concern is with the landlocked property. I don't know enough about it, but would the city work with that gentleman to ensure he has access to his property?
The only comment I would have on that is I don't know that that's before us today as part of this, as part of what we're reviewing. I defer to our attorney for that. But
No, I agree with you, board member. It's potentially an issue. I don't know anything about it until what I've heard today. Either way, though, it's not before you for consideration.
Any other comments?
I think the applicant provide competent evidence of good development on this piece of property. So if it wasn't 20 feet high, when it is one-story building, it would be a staff approval. I think it would have been approved already. So I voted for it.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Move to approve case number FLD 2020-030006 based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application. The staff report at today's hearing and hereby make the following following findings of fact based on said evidence. Am I reading the right one here? And hereby issue the conclusions of law that the application complies with the city code. Am I on the right one here?
Doesn't sound
Doesn't
right.
sound good.
Level 2.
I forgot.
Yeah, I think I'm on level 2. But how about this one? I move to approve case number FLD 2020-030006 based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report, and at today's hearing, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with the conditions of approval as listed.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Rusty.
Okay, if we'd like to take a moment, if some people need to rotate out of the room and other people need to rotate in, we could take a moment. The next application will be the North McMullen Booth application. Okay, we do have some empty chairs. Is that everyone? Okay, thank you. Our next level 2 case is case FLD 2020-01002, located at 2425 North McMullen Booth, and an unaddressed parcel. The owner is Kim A. Freedom Trust and Randall R. Freedom Trust. The agent Will Morgan with Vestcor Communities, Inc. This is located at This is 6.52 acres located on the west side of North McMullen Booth Road, approximately 875 feet south of Enterprise Road East. The Community Development Board is reviewing a proposed 99-bed assisted living facility with 32 attached dwelling independent living units in the medium-density residential district for the property located at 2425 North McMullen Booth Road, which consists of 2 parcels. The project will be 45 feet in height, includes 118 off-street parking spaces, and requests allowable flexibility from use and landscaping requirements. The associations are the Clearwater Neighborhoods Coalition, Oakbrook Estates HOA, and Board of County Commissioners. The presenter is Melissa Hock-Baker, AICP Senior Planner. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to request party status on this case? I know there's a number of people, so please approach the podium. If you don't mind, state your name, spell your name, and your address as well.
My name is Christina Klein, Kline. My address is 3044 Oak Hill Road in Clearwater. And our home is adjacent to both Barton Lane and the Freedom Trust property.
Okay, were you notified of the project?
Yes.
From the city? Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to grant party status, or any questions?
So
from the board?
moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. You're granted party status. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes? Please feel free to approach the podium. Please state your name and spell your last name and give your address.
My name is Nadine Fahim, Fahim. I am the owner of Lot 26 in Oakbrook Estates at 3026 Oakbrook Circle, Clearwater, Florida, 33759.
Okay, did you receive notification from the city on this project?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to grant party status?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to request party status?
My name is Rachel Friesma. I reside at 3040 Shady, Pin Oak Lane West, and I am a resident of Shady Oak. Friesma, that's F as in Frank, Riesema. And yeah, so I did receive notice as well.
Okay, any questions from the board? Do we have a motion to grant party status?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Is there anyone else who wishes to request party status? Okay, the board has granted party status to Ms. Klein, Ms. Fahin, and Ms. Frasima for this case. The granting of party status entitles you to these additional rights. You can personally testify, present evidence by documentary submittal, present witnesses, conduct cross-examination of any witnesses, present argument, appeal the decision of the board to a hearing officer and/or to circuit court. We will now have our presentation by planning and development staff.
Do we need to accept the expert?
Board, excuse me, Jeremy Michael Fulwino, Assistant City Attorney, we would ask the board to accept Alec Randall as an expert on the matters who's about to testify.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Good afternoon, I'm Ellen Crandall. I am presenting on behalf of Melissa Hawk-Baker, who's unable to be here today. This case is not on the consent agenda as we have received several written letters of objection which have been communicated to the board. Additionally, there is a minor Scribner's error on the staff report on page 10 where the names of the adjacent developments were switched, where it should say Oakbrook Estates and Shady Oak Farms. They were in reversed order. So the proposal before you today was for the property at 2425 North McMullen Booth Road, which is comprised of two parcels. Both of the parcels are zoned medium-density residential zoning district. The property is adjacent to low-density residential to the west and low-medium-density residential to the south, and the north and east are both in the city of Safety Harbor. To the north, there's a stormwater pond and a commercial plaza, and then to the east, across McMullen Booth Road, is another single-family neighborhood. The subject property was annexed into the city in 2016. At the same time, it also had a zoning atlas amendment and a future land use amendment establishing it as the medium-density residential, as well as the medium-density residential, and the future land use to residential low-medium, So the zoning district, MDR, establishes the permitted uses, the development parameters such as height, setback, and required parking. The future land use establishes the maximum density or intensity such as dwelling units per acre. The proposal is to construct an assisted living facility with 99 beds and 32 attached dwelling independent living units. Though these are called out as two different items for the purposes of zoning review, this is one integrated project. The use of assisted living facility may be requested in the medium-density residential zoning district as a level 2 flexible development application, which this project is. Further, the use of attached dwellings is being requested through a residential infill project as part of the level 2 application. Both of these uses are able to be requested in the zoning district. As the property abuts single-family homes to the south and to the west, the most active elements of the project have been designed to be to the east and to the north. So this is McMullen Booth here. The single-family homes are to the south and the west. The most active elements including the main entrance, the parking, the generators, and the tallest portions of the building, and even internal to the building, the independent living units are also located in the central to the northeast of the project to buffer the adjacent single-family homes as much as possible. The eastern portion of the building is 3 stories and it steps down to 2 stories towards the west. The proposal complies with the required development parameters of the zoning district, including the height, setbacks, and required parking. The required setbacks for both an assisted living facility and attached dwellings are 25-foot front, 5-foot side, and 10-foot rear. Residential infill projects may request down to a 10-foot front and 0-foot side and rear. However, the project proposes to exceed all required setbacks with a 25-foot front setback to pavement, a 5-foot side north setback to building, a 30-foot rear setback to building, and a 35-foot side setback to building and 10 feet to pavement. That's a little easier to see on the landscape plan. The project has submitted a comprehensive landscape program due to a few of the interior landscape islands being less than the required 17 feet back of curb width. However, the remainder of the proposed landscaping meets or exceeds the code requirements. The proposal includes a 15-foot buffer along McMullen Booth, a 10-foot side buffer along the south, a 5-foot landscape buffer to the north, and a 10-foot landscape buffer to the rear. There are also green space areas and greater width of that. And it's due to these larger green space areas that the project is also able to propose preserving several of the trees that are on the site. These are shown here with some of the larger circles. These are some of the existing trees proposed to be preserved, mostly along McMullen Booth and along the edges. In the MDR zoning district, the use of assisted living facility and residential infill may request a height of up to 50 feet. The project proposes a maximum height of 40 feet, which is measured to the midpoint of a pitched roof, and this highest height is measured at the tower element towards the entrance. The remainder of the building is 3 stories, and it steps down to 2 stories towards the west. Here you can also see where the tower element is, the 3-story portion, and then how it steps down to 2 stories. So this would be the LDR zoning district here to the west, and then to the south here would be the LMDR zoning district. It should also be noted that the flexibility criteria for an assisted living facility in the medium density residential requires the building to not have a flat roof. Off-street parking will be screened with the landscaped and decorative 4-foot wall that is shown here in the top right. This will be primarily along McMullen Booth. The majority of the perimeter will have a 6-foot solid PVC fence, which has been conditioned in the staff report under condition number 5 to have a color matching the building palette and to have a wood grain texture. Further, the fire access of Barton Lane will be gated and locked, which is shown here kind of on the middle right of their submittal. It should also be noted that 6 foot in height is the maximum fence height that can be requested for this area. Unlike our previous case where they could request 8 because they were commercial adjacent to residential, there is no code provision for a greater fence than 6 feet in height. The ingress-egress will be off of McMullen Booth Road. As I noted, the access of Barton Lane will be locked and gated for fire and emergency access only. The project in both the site plan, the architectural elevations, has been designed to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods by providing substantial setbacks, landscape buffers, and green space, reducing the height as they near the residential neighborhoods, and designing the areas of activity to be to the east and the north away from the neighborhoods. The project is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and is consistent with the applicable requirements of the Community Development Code. And as such, Staff recommends approval with the conditions of approval detailed in the staff report. These conditions of approval do detail items such as that the drainage will be handled at the erosion control shall be approved at time of building permit, that lighting shall not negatively impact the adjacent neighborhoods and will meet the code requirements. Those are detailed in the conditions of approval. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just want to make sure it's clear on the record. We received a package of the letters I think you referred to, and interspersed throughout that package of letters, I noticed a number of people expressing concerns that they just found out about this or they didn't know this was happening. Can you just speak to that, whether the ordinary notice procedures were followed?
Yes, so the procedures for this application were followed. It was advertised, it was posted, and the notices went out in accordance with the requirements for CDC, or the CDB. This particular project was originally slated to come before the March CDB. It went to the Development Review Committee in February, and at that meeting, at least 2 or 3 of the neighborhoods attended the Development Review Committee meeting. So they saw the site plans and they asked some questions. Unfortunately, I'm speaking on behalf of Melissa Hawk-Baker, who is the case planner. She's been the point of contact with the neighborhood for quite a while for these many last months. So I know residents attended DRC in February. This case resubmitted, but due to the March CDB not having a quorum and then the COVID cancellations, has been suspended, but it was advertised for this meeting today, meeting all of those requirements.
Thank you.
The proposal today is for 32 units. If the proposal was for a single-family subdivision on this 6.5 acres, what would be the allowable density?
The allowable density would be the same as far as, so if it's 6.52 acres and then based on the underlying future land use of residential low medium, the allowable maximum density would stay the same. It would kind of end up, how could you, if they were able to carve it up, how many lots would fit? Would they be able to have enough lots to
Just
meet?
theoretically, they're not asking for more units than they could put single-family homes on the site.
They're not asking for more units than what the land is otherwise entitled, because they cannot ask for more units than what the land is otherwise, able to request through the underlying future land use. That wouldn't change whether it was an assisted living facility, an apartment complex, single-family homes. The maximum dwelling units would be the same.
And is there any, sorry, Brian, is there any restriction on if it was a single-family home, building a 2-story home on this property?
If it's zoned MDR and they wanted to subdivide it and build single-family homes, they would have to meet the code requirements of the MDR. I mean, I want to say it's a 25-foot maximum height, but I want to look up the code to say. But I mean, generally, you can accommodate a 2-story home on most residential zoning districts.
We're doing hypotheticals here. If it was developed as single family, then probably you would want to open up apartment as a through street, so it would connect to another subdivision, or would that be, is it generally we're leaving them as only one access?
I mean, Barton is a public right-of-way. I mean, if this is a hypothetical, if it was submitted, to be a single-family development, that's probably something that would be discussed both with planning and engineering. So I don't want to speak with, their knowledge, but I would think we would want connections. I mean, if it's a single-family home subdivision, the buildings would be much closer. The trees would likely not be accommodated. I mean, it would have a number of different development, different design impacts.
Would it be possible to go back to the rendering you had of the site plan and just indicate, again, how many stories we have on the building and in what location?
So the tallest element is the tower entry, which is right here towards the front. This portion of the building is then 3 stories. And then here it steps down to 2 stories. And I believe even this portion here is 2 stories. And we can go to the, so this is the tower element here. So this is McMullen Booth Road over here. So your entry, your tower. That first kind of T is 2 stories. The central kind of main body is 3 stories, and then here it goes down to 2, and then towards the back they kind of Y out, so even it's kind of an oblique angle even as it approaches the neighborhood.
Okay. Any other comments from the board or questions? Okay, thank you. Next up is the presentation by the applicant.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Will Morgan with Escort Communities. We're the applicant representing the landowner.
Okay.
I guess I'd like to start just thanking Ellen and her staff. They did a tremendous job getting us up to speed on what we should consider for our site planning. And we had meetings early on with all the resources that they brought to the table to allow us to understand, and through public record requests, understand previous applicants and site plans, what were hot buttons and things that we should consider in our own site plan. So we took all those into consideration. And I guess the best thing I can do is kind of talk you through the process, as opposed to sit up here and tell you why we would do a good job. I can tell you the type of input that we encouraged and really engaged with the neighbors to try to get everything on the table for consideration before we proposed our site plan. And we had an initial meeting in February, which was a pre-application meeting with the staff. Subsequent to that, we had a community meeting where we noticed all the surrounding neighborhoods, encouraged them to come learn more about our project. We presented some inspirational images, what the project might look like, the densities, the site plan, which was consistent with what you see today, because we had already considered things like traffic and lighting and parking, and these communities do have a service element to them. So we oriented that, as Ellen pointed out, to the north side of the property, so that it would, everything associated with traffic and lighting would be away from the neighbors. I think the biggest hot button is the Barton Lane element to this, the connectivity, which we've cut off that connectivity but for the fire department. Other items that were considerations, we felt like we improved the setbacks tremendously. We either 5 or 10 foot requirement. We went to 25 to 35 feet. We kept it 2 stories along the back, which is the LDR section. We do go to 3 stories on the front, but we can go up to 50 feet, and we're at 42 at the highest point. Our density is a fraction of the allowable. I think we're at 70% of the allowable density, which actually fits right in the comfort level for us as an operator. We don't want to get too big. We feel like we can provide the right level of service and care to our residents at about the level that we've proposed, so that's comfortable for us. Landscaping, site lighting, all those things were considerations. Tree save. There's some beautiful trees on this property, and we've been able to save a number of them. So we feel like that was an aspect that we considered. And again, back to the engagement with neighbors. I've answered every phone call and email, informed them about our project. If they weren't able to attend the library meeting that we had in early March, and then we've invited them to attend the DRC meeting 2 representatives were able to attend on behalf of the entire neighborhood. And subsequent to that, I went back and met with them again in the front yard, actually, and talked through hot buttons, and just made myself available at every opportunity for emails, phone calls, whatever they needed. I was trying to answer the questions and incorporate their concerns into our project. So without spending a lot of time on the overall concept, we do try to deliver a best-in-class property in every market that we enter. Vescor's been in business over 35 years. We're based out of Jacksonville, Florida. We've developed over 15,000 units across the state. I like to think that we consider heavily what the neighbors might be concerned about, but I feel like we've also complied with every aspect of the code requirements in this case on this site, and actually at a lower density and bigger setbacks and lower scale project than what was allowable. So with that, I guess I'd like to at least introduce our team and make everybody available as a resource. We have Gary Corsi, our architect. He's out of Atlanta. He's here today. We have David Smith, our land use expert. He's with Stearns Weaver here locally. And Ron Anderson and Cole Lane are both with Anderson Lane. They're our civil engineers. For any questions, technical questions, I'm just here to coordinate and make sure we engage residents and get feedback and have a project that goes smoothly. So.
Okay. Does the board have any questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Klein, we now have our presentation by person with party status. You will have 5 minutes.
Okay. Again, I'm Chris Klein, and our home is adjacent to both Barton Lane and the Freedom Trust property in question. And I would like to, first of all, speak to the non-notification to homeowners. We were notified, but what we weren't notified of were all the cancellations. I think it wasn't well handled, and I hope that in the future they will do a better job, because it was very frustrating. We're having it, we're not having it. So on, it was incredibly frustrating. Okay, now, before I forget, I want to give you those. And first, I want to thank Will Morgan for keeping the lines of communication open between us over these last months through email. He's absolutely right. He answered every email, and with the exception of the first one, very quickly. We further appreciate Mr. Morgan and the people at Vescor for the efforts and assurances they've made to save the magnificent century-old trees on the site of the proposed assisted living facility. Also, and critically, Mr. Morgan's response on March 9th was quick and definite in his assurance of no flooding potential from their developed property into our neighborhood. We appreciate that the assisted living which Vescor is developing is considered best in class, particularly in light of this horrid COVID-19. We do, however, have some grave concerns. First is the proposal for Barton Lane. I understand the plan is for Vescor to install a gate and a Knox box, after which the only access to open the gate will be in the hands of the Clearwater Police and the Clearwater Fire Department, which is all good. However, this will mean losing the additional parking and common area we now enjoy for neighborhood picnics, etc. And unfortunately, the plan as it stands has every potential for being an ugly eyesore on the neighborhood as it's now designed. Secondly, the height of 45 feet. will infringe on the privacy of the people in our neighborhood, as well as be visually overpowering in comparison to the height of the rest of the structures surrounding us. Third, the CDB staff report calls for flexibility from use and landscaping requirements. When I asked Mr. Morgan what that meant, he volunteered that he didn't know. And without more specific information, we can't possibly comment or present support or opposition. Fourth, our access to and from McMullen Booth Road is already difficult. For 6 years, I've tried with difficulty to merge onto McMullen Booth from Marlow at 6:50 in the morning, and that's why I'm turning right. Turning left into our neighborhood from McMullen Booth can seem treacherous at any time of day. And it's undeniable that with the addition of possibly over 100 more cars merging onto McMullen Booth, as well as delivery trucks and ambulances from right next door to us, this new facility will aggravate the problem. It just will. I do want to stress that I believe none of these concerns and objections are without reasonable solutions, as long as we're all willing to work together. I simply ask that the City of Clearwater delay their decision on this project long enough to work with VestCorp on options that would be less intrusive to our neighborhood. And honestly, I think most of the suggestions wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it'd make a huge deal to me. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Ms. Fahim? I hope I said that correctly.
I think so. Fahim with an M, like Mary at the end. Thank you. And I have not been officially sworn in.
Thank you.
Yes, I do. Thank you. So I am the owner of Lot 26, which is the north west corner of the project. I do want to clarify for record, you had asked me if I received notice from the city. I did receive notice from the city about this meeting. However, I did not receive notice from the city about the project occurring, in advance of this meeting. I did receive a letter from the owners that this project was going on with, contact information, which I greatly appreciate. The link that was in the meeting notice for this meeting was not working so that I could retrieve the documents. So I did finally get access yesterday before the end of the day. So I apologize that this letter that I had submitted early this morning came in last minute. But I spent several hours reviewing documents that I only had access to last night. So, I appreciate that there will be a fence going up. My main concern is that there are two wings of the building that are going to be overlooking my property. One is the 3-story tall area where the kitchen and common area and some other floors are going to be. And that's the north-facing wing that overlooks the garbage area, as well as the Wing E, which contains the residence areas. So those two will have direct line of sight into our home, which includes 2 master bedroom windows, a master bedroom glass patio window door, the window overlooking our master bathtub and shower, as well as our entire balcony that overlooks our common area in our home, our living space, living room, dining room, as well as the foyer and part of our kitchen. So if these floors go up that high, everybody will be able to see directly into our home, day or night. We also have a backyard pool and jacuzzi, grill area, sitting area, so we will not even be able to enjoy our privacy in those areas. I'm definitely not going to be wearing my bathing suit sunbathing in my pool when I have a building of people looking at me or possibly being able to look at me. So that basically removes our ability to use our backyard area, as well as removes all the privacy inside of our home especially our master bedroom and living room. So this is a major concern for us. If that does happen and we do move forward with the project as is, then we would have to move. We can't live in a home where we don't have any privacy. And obviously, any project that goes up like this behind a property that has this amount of privacy already, reduces that property value. And we would be having to sell at a loss, and we already invested in a premium to get this corner lot with this privacy. So we are asking for reconsideration of the height. We did send in a letter so that we would like to work through all of the issues and questions, that we have raised, and are happy to work together to do that. The other thing, some other items that are pertinent, our property already has a dry pond, a massive one that spans 2 properties in our subdivision. So we also have an in-ground pool and spa. So that dry pond that is going to be adjacent to our property is a huge concern to us. It's going to attract a lot of pests. We already have a snake problem in addition to many other rats and other pests that come in. I'm very, very concerned with the storm surge and hurricanes overflowing that into our property. We already have problems with the pond next door, on our property, so would like to address that and make sure it doesn't, affect us, especially with storm surge, and that's factored for. We've had already issues even before construction starting with people trespassing on our property, standing next to our bedroom windows completely unannounced, no knocking, nothing, and we were not dressed. We were not ready for guests to be standing next to our bedroom windows, so we would like the property owners to make sure that anybody coming onto their property to do work is very cognizant of the property line and is aware that that pond is actually part of our property, not a common area, and they should not be, 30-something feet deep into our property, especially without knocking. We're very reasonable. We understand there needs to be surveys and things done, but that is a concern to us, our privacy during construction and after construction, as well as debris being left on our property. We had, is that my time? Or what's, oh, okay. The one last thing is the trees going up. We do have a solar system going in, so we do not want any shade or any additional maintenance to have to be done for trees coming in our property. So all of our concerns are detailed in the letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Frazima?
Brought some packets, some information packets. So, let me just give you a little idea. That from where I'm standing to there is 19 feet and 9 inches. So the setback to Overbrook Estates is 30 feet, which is just 10 more feet. So it's less than the length of this room. And 35 feet to Shady Oak Farms, which is the subdivision I live in. So as you can see, it's really not very far. And when you talk about 45 feet tall, that's 3 stories tall. And so it looks like, and because I hadn't seen the plans either, and so it looks like they kind of moved the buildings around a little bit to where hopefully the residents are not going to have a direct view of the people who live there, because as the lady who spoke before me so adequately spoke, you lose privacy. You totally lose your privacy in the backyard. You don't want your kids out there. You don't want to, you just can't use your backyard anymore because you don't know who's looking. You've got a second story, you've got a third story, you've got 99 residents in that building, basically. So it's 99 assisted living and 32 independent living. 3 stories tall, with only a 6-foot PVC fence separating. So I brought, this is kind of a cool thing, I didn't know this was here, but let's see. All right, so this is a little overview of the map. Here is Podocarpus, right here on the side. This is Shady Oak Farms with 35-foot setback. This is a 30-foot setback here. The property's not really very large. Okay, so now I'm going to show you, because last time that we went through this, this is Regency Oaks. This is all in your packages too that I gave you. Regency Oaks, you know, is no comparison, because the width between the residential areas and the buildings is immense. Okay, and the buildings that are closer to the residential areas are just single story. So there's really no comparison when they talk about that. Then peaceful enjoyment. We have, property owners have a right to peaceful enjoyment of their homes, right? So property law gives the landowner the right to full use and enjoyment of his property without substantial interference from others under reasonable circumstances. And that includes disturbances with sleep and noise, etc. So the 4 different types of harm that can be done in this category are physical harm to the property, physical harm to people. We don't believe that any of that's going to take place. However, mental disturbance and annoyance to people, you know, I mean, if you're always worried and you can't be at home in your home, you know, that's mental, yeah? Emotional. And then interference that causes economic loss or depreciation of the property. As a realtor in the city of Clearwater for 14 years, I have lots of certifications, including certified residential specialist and seniors residential or real estate specialist. I've done a lot of work in the area, and I know that the properties are going to be devalued. It's going to start first with the properties that are immediately next door. She's already talking about moving. You know, what happens then? You put the property on the market, and nobody wants a property because it's got this massive building behind it. All of our landscape is going to change there. And so then the only thing really, it doesn't matter if it's beautiful, it doesn't matter if it's been upgraded, because if nobody wants it, what happens? You have to decrease the price. Price is the only thing that's going to be the equalizing factor. In Shady Oak Farms, we already have one adverse condition there, and that is that some of our homes back up to Podocarpus, back up to McMullen Booth Road, and those are the homes mainly on Podocarpus there, and Pin Oak Drive. And so, I'm going to show you. This is a little CMA of recent activity in our neighborhood. Okay, so the one that you see on the top there, is my time up?
Yes, but go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay, so the one on the top backs up to McMullen Booth. The other 2 that I have circled back up to McMullen Booth, you're going to see that the prices that they sold at were significantly less than the ones that were inside of the neighborhood, because they have that one adverse condition. If we had another adverse condition,
Now, I can't let you go on too long, just to be fair to everyone.
yeah, okay. They're all going to be counted as comps for all of us in the neighborhood, and therefore all of our values would be decreased eventually. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next is cross-examination. That's fine. Cross-examination. So I have to stop. I've reached my limit. The cross-examination of witnesses by planning and development staff. Cross-examination of witnesses by applicant. Cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status. We now have comments by the public. If anyone from the public would like to speak, this is your opportunity. Please approach the podium, state your name.
My name is Carmela Carpenter. I live at 3047 Oak Cove Drive in Shady Oak Farms, and I have to say Shady Oak Farms because I have been living there for 35 years. My concerns, I have heard every one of the concerns for the building that is proposed, the facility that's proposed for that area. I am not against that type of facility. I am against where it is. This facility, I have not heard one person who is constructing this facility say that they are making it safe for their residents. I live there. I have seen the construction of McMullen Booth Road widening. I have seen orange groves be housing neighborhoods. I have not heard anybody address the safety of the residents in this facility. And let me tell you, if Barton Lane is the only way that they are going, that emergency vehicles are going to be able to get in and out of this area to bring someone to a hospital or to put out a fire, it's not going to work. My husband, 8 years ago, fell off the roof. He had 4 bleeding arteries in the back of his forehead. We did not know that this had happened to him till 4 o'clock in the morning. An ambulance came to get him, and they could not access out of our facility. It's going to happen, and I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see a fire not being able to put out. I don't want to see somebody in an ambulance not being able to go to the hospital. This piece of property that you are speaking about, that is going to have this facility on it, there's really only one way in it and one way out of it, and that is on McMullen Booth Road. And as you heard one person say, if I have to go right on left, north on McMullen Booth Road, I have to go right. Well, I have learned to do this. I have to go right. I go down to the school at on McMullen Booth Road. I make a light. I go to the red light, and then I go left to the north shopping centers. These are my concerns. I don't care how beautiful the building is. They can take the trees, yes, it's wonderful, etc., etc. However, I am concerned about the safety of the children in my neighborhood, because the only way that an emergency vehicle is going to be able to enter safely is through my neighborhood on Barton Lane. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? Next up, we have closing remarks by the Planning and Development staff. Closing remarks by persons granted party status. Does anyone wish to have a closing remark? Please approach the podium. And just state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Rachel Friesma from 2316 Pin Oak Lane West in Clearwater, Florida. So I know that there are a lot of baby boomers aging out, and this is a big concern. In the package that I gave you, there's a brand new state-of-the-art facility being built just down the street from us. By Aravilla. It's already under construction. It's 2 stories with 95 beds for memory care and 132 beds for assisted living. We have a huge number of facilities already in the area that are operating. If you go up and down McMullen Booth Road and just out within a few miles, 2-3 miles, there are so many facilities that are already there and operating. We really don't need another ALF. What we do need is some maintenance-free villa communities for 55 plus. If we really want to help the 55 plus community, that's what they're looking for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other persons who have been granted party status wish to make a closing remark? Okay, closing remarks by applicant.
Will Morgan, Escort Communities. So just real quick, I probably ought to run through my list that I didn't previously run through, just a couple of things. So this is the initial site plan that you've seen that's been proposed. As far as view corridors and areas where we have low density, high density, these are 2-story, as it was pointed out, 3-story across here. We've saved trees on areas where we could save trees and all across the front. I believe the one neighbor spoke. We've been able to save this large tree right there in our backyard. We have nobody at the end of this building. That's a stairwell up and down inside the building, so there's really no views over the back fence in that area. But nonetheless, again, just stressing how we really try to preserve view corridors as best we can and save trees and the buffer off the building. The buffer is 35 feet off the property line, and so it's not 35 feet to the person's back of their home. And it would be, I think it's interesting to point out that we had a competing proposal on this property, the seller did, from a 65-unit townhome developer that would have higher traffic counts, probably 5-foot setbacks, connectivity to Barton Lane. A lot of the things that I've heard over the course of this that were not appealing to the neighbors. Felt like our property probably accommodated better than that townhome community would, especially the connectivity. I'm almost certain they would want the connectivity to Barton Lane. Eyesore, I probably didn't do a good enough job of, I think this was in here for just to show elevation, heights and things, but that's more representative of the look and feel of our property. This is one in Jacksonville. Here's some other inspirational images that we talked about at our community meeting. This is a property that we developed also. We would probably choose the Mediterranean style for this property, just it fits the neighborhood better. Just some shots of the inside. This is a bistro bar area for anytime dining, lunch, dinner, breakfast, dining room. I feel like the economic loss, we did look at that. This is a property in Jacksonville, the one I showed previously, with all the neighbors around us. We researched what transpired in their property values since we broke ground, and they've all gone up. These are $250,000 price points that have gone up, $23,000, $17,000, $17,000. So there's been no loss in property value for sure. I think the safety is absolutely one of our most important things. I think all fire and rescue people are coming through the front entrance all the time. They're taking the address of the property, they're coming through the front entrance. Knock on wood, in my 20 years of ESCOR, we've never had a fire that required access to the second floor, but in the event we absolutely needed it, we have it, and that would be the only reason for that Barton Lane connectivity. So hopefully we never need it. It's there if we do. But other than that, I feel like the fire department and everybody else is coming through the front entrance to serve our neighbors and our residents, excuse me. Lastly, market study. We did perform a market study, and there's a huge unmet demand in this submarket. That's clear in the research we've done and the market study that we received. So feel good about that. I feel comfortable that we've addressed all that we can with our neighbors. I think Ms. Klein stated that, I've really tried to correspond timely with everyone, informing them, and also taking into consideration their feedback and really this a fluid process for everyone. So thank you for your time, and thank the planning staff for their time. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. That's the closing of the public hearing, discussion, and vote by the board.
No comments?
Okay.
I'd say I think it's I appreciate the efforts put forth by the developer, the architect, the planners. I think it's a thoughtful design that's not maximizing use of the lot. I appreciate that there's been good communication. I think that there's a real effort at trying to be a good neighbor, and I, for one, support the project.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. Regarding the Barton Lane access, the way I understand it, and Mr. Morgan came on up here too, and staff maybe can help out, that's really emergency access only, correct? I mean, if you're going to get a police or a fireman coming to the property, they're coming to property address. It's not that they have to go in through Barton. And correct me if I'm wrong here, they would be going in, but if they needed to bring in 2 trucks, or if it's blocked up on front, because I know that's why we've been having problems with single access subdivisions now too. They don't want a single point of entry. And in theory, I'm looking at this, that this could, if there was an access problem to the property to the south, that if they needed to, fire has the ability to take access as they need to. And if they need to access through Barton to get into the subdivision, the residential, they could also do that the opposite way. Is that correct or not?
That's correct. I'm Keith Hatton. I'm the Assistant Fire Marshal at Clearwater Park. I'm sorry? Hatton, Hatten. Yes. So the Barton access is really set up and designed just for egress for the emergency vehicles in the case of a fire. Ambulances won't have to worry about it. There's a nice porte-cochere turnaround. Ambulances would come and go. Like Mr. Morgan said, you go to the front address side, and then they would exit back out on McMullen Booth. Same with the fire trucks, emergency. The reason that fire access is there is, according to the NFPA code, NFPA 1, we have to get within 50 feet of a door of the building. And we also have to be able to get within 450 feet from any point of the building. So that's why they've created that lane. But it doesn't have to be open all the time. So what they've done is they've gated it off on the east end and they've gated it off on Barton. So its only access or only use will be if we had a fire emergency, we had to get down the south side of that building. We open the gate with our key, we go down there, we do our operations, and then at the end of it, we open the Barton gate, or it slides, and then we exit, the gate closes, and then that's the only time we would use it.
And correct me if I'm wrong too. I mean, it seems to be, noticed that our subdivisions and such too, if something's happening during the middle of the night, isn't it mostly ambulances, fire, once they get into a subdivision, lights are on, but sirens are usually off anyways too. So at 2 o'clock, we're not sitting there waking up the neighborhood.
The sirens turn off, the lights stay on, but the sirens turn off.
Okay. Thank you on that. That's all I have for, if anybody else has a question.
I didn't realize you were here with plenty of staff on the line, but essentially when I was doing development or fire department, they required it, that's the FDA stuff you're talking about.
Correct.
So it's not like they decided to put it in because.
No, their design meets the requirement of the code. I wish I had a picture. On the northwest corner of the property, they had to put what we call a T-turn to allow for the apparatus that went down this. They created a 150-foot dead end. Well, they created a T-turn to allow the apparatus to turn around and get out, so there's no dead ends. There wasn't enough space on the south side of the property for them to do that, but you have a public way of Barton Lane where they just tied right into Barton Lane. Not to make it a thoroughfare, just to make it an egress point for us to get out and not have to back the fire trucks up, which meets the code requirement.
So it's from your requirement, not theirs.
Correct. That was our requirement. Anything else?
I just,
all right, thank you.
I had some more comments, but as Mr. Morgan brought up there at the end too, and I think my question early on was regarding a townhouse or single-family residential development on this property, the setbacks that you would have multiple houses or residences along the entire border of this property and much closer than what they're actually proposing on this. And we start talking about 2-story and 3-story. I'm taking a look at this. I mean, the only 3-story component of this is coming in the main entrance, the main hub of this project, along with not the front wings, but the two center wings going on out. On the 2 stories in the back, I mean, I know we talk about it and everybody gets going on about height, but I'm looking at the elevation plan, and Jordan, you may be able to help me out being better here, being an architect, that the floor level is at 12 feet 7 inches. I mean, so you're standing at 12 feet, so anybody that's up there, it's like a second floor to a house. I mean, you're not standing at 31 feet or 45 feet looking on down. And that's not any different from a single family or a townhouse residential project. And one of the units or one of the corners, from what I'm looking at the plan here, each corner is a stairwell on one side of it. So the other corner is a residential component, so to speak, unit, but the other one is a solid stairwell. So there's no windows, no nothing on that side of it. I'm just trying to address some of the things that were brought up from the residents and I'm hearing. I mean, I think you could have, in a residential development, you'll have no restriction on vehicle access at any point in time of the day. They can come and go. You're going to have a traffic pattern that is going to be much more intrusive than what they're showing on. I mean, I'm looking at, they gave a lot of thought to this to keep that traffic pattern on McMullen Booth Road and to the north end of the property, abutting the commercial property office to the north of us here in the creek. And again, Brian, you may be able to address this better too, being an engineer, is that it looks like the one concern about flooding and things of that with the dry retention pond, if I'm looking at this correctly, it looks like all the outfall goes into the creek that goes to the north of the property. So once that dry pond builds up to a certain level, the outfall structure's there in place for it to go. So it wouldn't go, it's designed so it can't go to the residences to the west or to the south. I appreciate the effort on the landscaping, on the trees, and the safety of that. I mean, I think there was, I'm really pleased. I mean, there's so many times when projects get in front of us here that, and I'm hearing from the residents too, that the development side of it kept that access conversation open to you, because a lot of times it doesn't happen. So, I mean, I'm sure that they're not addressing 100% of everything you want, but to have an open ear to address your concerns is quite refreshing on my side of it. And, to the point of, I mean, how many times do you hear a developer that comes on through that's reducing the density that's allocated to the property? I mean, usually they're coming in here trying to get 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag and trying to increase the density to the utmost limit. So, I know the concerns, I hear it. I mean, the Barton Lane, if that was a through open access, and it is a public street from what I'm hearing, dedicated street, but it's not going to be used that way. For the most part, they still will be able to make use of it as it is. I think they've given a lot of thought to this development, and unless I hear something different, I'm going to tend to support as well.
John, Mary?
I just echo what Mr. Kwiatkowski said, that I hear and understand the sincere concerns of the adjoining homeowners, but I'm convinced that the evidence shows the project meets code, and I think that the developer has done everything possible to minimize that loss of privacy, to address that with landscaping and other pieces of the project, so I'm inclined to support it.
I don't have anything else to add. That hasn't already been said.
Okay. I would just add that I'm also a landscape architect, and I look at the exterior a lot, and I appreciate the effort that this developer has made with the existing conditions and some of the existing trees. There are a lot of large oaks on this, or large trees on this property that are being preserved, and I can see they worked around those. And I appreciate what they've done with the building to sort of respect the location of the residential units as well. That's all I have to say. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case number FLD 2020-01002 based on the evidence and testimony presented in the hearing today. and adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with the conditions of approval as listed.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Our next Level 2 case today is FLD 2015-09036A, related to FLD 2013-04015A, 402, 411, 421, 425, and 431 South Gulfview Boulevard, South Gulfview Boulevard right-of-way. This is a Level 2 application. The owner is the City of Clearwater. The agent is Catherine E. Cole with Hill Ward in Henderson, PA. The location, 2.416 acres bound by South Gulfview Boulevard West, Coronado Drive East and 5th Street North, South Gulfview Boulevard right-of-way between Hamden Drive and 5th Street. The Community Development Board is reviewing an amendment to an approved Level 2 flexible development application for the construction of a 248-unit hotel utilizing 127 existing hotel units and an additional 100 units allocated from the Hotel Density Reserve through Beach by Design as currently approved through HDA 2014-06004 within the tourist district for the property located at 401, 411, 421, 425, and 431 South Gulfview Boulevard. The project will be 150 feet in height, proposes a minimum of 298 off-street parking spaces available for the hotel, and an additional 230 off-street parking spaces available to the general public, and includes a proposed pedestrian overpass bridge extending between the subject site and 430 South Gulfview Boulevard, spanning Beach Walk and the South Gulfview Boulevard right-of-way. The project requests allowable flexibility from height, setback requirements, and the design guidelines of Beach by Design and a 2-year development order, Community Development Code Sections 2.2-803.d and 4-407. The associations, Clearwater Neighborhoods Coalition, Clearwater Beach Association, and Board of County Commissioners. The presenter is Mark T. Perry, AICP Senior Planner. First, we're going to ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to request party status on this case. Okay, seeing no one, we will move to the presentation by Planning and Development staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before the presentation begins, Michael Foligno, Assistant City Attorney, would ask the board to accept Mark Perry as an expert on the matters he's about to testify on.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Good afternoon. I will be brief. This project has been before this board before. Most recently, it was before City Council. Its prior approvals were essentially for this building. What's changed since the last time this board has seen it is that the applicant has acquired the Post Corner Pizza property. They did have to go to City Council to amend their development agreement, which they did at the end of last year, to add that property. And of course, adding property to an approved flexible development application requires that it come back to this board. The reason that it was taken off of the consent agenda, we did get not necessarily an objection, but an email of concern regarding sidewalk widths. So to directly speak to that, the sidewalk widths are essentially going to remain as they are. There's no narrowing of sidewalk. The project obviously doesn't encroach into the right-of-way, so the sidewalks that are there, that are in the right-of-way, the intention is to maintain them. Obviously, if they're damaged during construction, they'll be replaced in kind. One other point, I assume that you all received a memo from me on making one minor amendment to condition 13. There is a Scrivener's error where it said that accessory uses would be limited to 10%. That should be 15%, which is consistent with code. So I would ask that minor change be adopted as part of staff's recommended conditions of approval. If there are any specific concerns or comments, I can try to address them. If not, the applicant, I'm sure, can.
Any questions from the board? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you.
Presentation by the applicant.
Lower this so you can hear me. Good afternoon. Katie Cole with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson, representing the applicant. Mr. Perry went through the background of this project and all of the compliance with Beach by Design in his staff report. And so we do have the architect here as well as the engineer and the owner's rep if there are specific things that we can answer. But we don't want to belabor this because I know unless you had questions about the sidewalks, it could have been done a couple hours ago. So I did want to reiterate what Mr. Perry said. The sidewalks are part of Beach by Design in this area, and so they're incorporated in conjunction with the city's engineering department to reflect the Beach by Design plans. The property does have a 0-foot setback on the front, and so the sidewalks are all in the city right-of-way there. There is an existing road spur that was included when the city previously did Beach by Design and relocated South Gulfview. That's being closed and green space is being added in that area. And so that's an opportunity there for the city and the applicant in that right-of-way area to look at what else might be done in conjunction with the existing landscape architecture features of Beach by Design. As Mr. Perry said, the proposed plans before you are consistent with those that were approved as an exhibit to the development agreement in November. And there is a companion piece across the street for Opal Sands. Just because we do have this opportunity, I wanted to highlight that these are the owners of the Opal Sands, and this new design that's coming back and the opportunity to add the real estate allowed them to really create a product and an architecture scheme that is reflective of the Opal Sands. And so when you see these two projects together across the street, it's a very beautiful serpentine look that kind of goes across the street there. And I think that it will be personally a great addition to South Beach and does meet all of Beach by Design. This is probably the third or fourth time a project at this site has been before this board with various amendments. So again, we don't want to belabor it, but happy to answer any questions and provide any additional details and exhibits. Like I said, we have the team here. We have all of the exhibits available and are happy to walk through those. So.
Okay, any questions from the board? Thank you, Mrs. Cole. Presentation by persons with party status, none. Cross-examination of witnesses by planning and development staff. Cross-examination of witnesses by applicant. Cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status, none. Comments by the public. Okay, no comments by the public. Closing remarks by the planning and development staff. Seeing none. Closing remarks by persons granted party status, none. Closing remarks by applicant, none. This is the closing of the public hearing, discussion, and vote by the board. If there are no comments, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve case number FLD 2013-04015A, based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application of the staff report and at today's hearing, hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed, including the modified condition of approval that was discussed by Mr. Perry.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Our next level 2 case is case FLD 2013-04015A, related to the previous case, 430 South Gulfview Boulevard, South Gulfview Boulevard right-of-way, owner of City of Clearwater. Agent is Catherine E. Cole with Hill, Ward, and Henderson. Location 2.45 acres on the west side of South Gulfview Boulevard, approximately 500 feet northwest of Hamden Drive South. The Community Development Board is reviewing an amendment to an approved Level 2 flexible development application for a proposed pedestrian overpass bridge extending between the subject site and the property located at 401, 411, 421, 425, and 431 South Gulfview Boulevard, spanning Beach Walk and the South Gulfview Boulevard right-of-way in a 2-year development order. The presenter is Mark T. Perry, AICP Senior Planner. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to request party status on this case? Seeing no one, we will move forward with the presentation by Planning and Development staff.
I'll be even briefer. This project, the Opal Sands, was approved years ago and obviously constructed in accordance with the approved plans. The only reason that it needs to come back to this board is for the addition of that pedestrian overpass bridge. And the only reason that we removed it from the consent agenda, again, was because of the emails that had expressed concerns about sidewalk widths and things like that. Again, there is no change to any of the adjacent sidewalks to this property. All the construction, of course, on this particular project is above grade. And the only impacts are going to be on where this pedestrian bridge will connect to the second floor lobby. So there's no changes to the approved landscaping, sidewalk widths, or anything like that. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. If not, I'm sure the applicant can.
Does the board have any questions? No.
Thank you.
Presentation by the applicant.
Good afternoon, Katie Cole with Hill, Ward, Henderson, representing the applicant. As Mr. Perry said, the only change here is to modify the approved setback for the front setback, which will accommodate the receipt of the pedestrian bridge, which was part of the last application that was approved and as part of the city, the development agreement, which was approved by the city council. So as a condition of approval of that development agreement, the council asked for this application site plan to be modified just to reflect what the exterior will look like post-construction of the pedestrian bridge. So just to offer, the pedestrian bridge allows these two to be connected in a way that will really, from a tourism standpoint, Ocean Properties and Opal feels like gives a great opportunity for additional group sales and hosting of meetings and with this connection. And so it's hopeful that this will be a great benefit to the tourism community out on the beach.
Thank you. Cross-examination of witnesses by Planning and Development staff. Cross-examination of witnesses by applicant. Cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status. None. Comments by the public. None. Closing remarks by the Planning and Development staff. Closing remarks by persons granted party status. Closing remarks by applicant. We are now closing. This is closing of the public hearing, discussion, and vote by the board. Are there any comments from the board, or do we have a motion?
Move to approve case number FLD 2013-04015A related to FLD 2015-09036A based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report, and at today's hearing, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report with conditions of approval as listed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have the director's items.
That'd be the first item. It's listed under director's items, but you all need to elect your officers for the
Aha.
coming year.
Okay. So we have the election of the officers. Do we have any discussion?
I don't see any reason to change a good thing.
That's what I was going to say, is if they're willing to serve, I'd like to keep our current officers.
Well,
I would-
Michael's not here, so.
He's willing to serve.
I would nominate both of them again.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Hi.
Hi.
Gina Clayton, Planning and Development. If you recall, when you had the Edgewater case, we talked about the need to better educate our residents about what their rights are with regard to quasi-judicial hearings. And fortunately, we finally have it done, thanks to a lot of help from our legal department. And I'm sorry it was sent out to you so late, but I hope you got a chance to maybe look through it. If you would like, a little longer opportunity to review it and give us comments back, we'd be happy to take them. But essentially what this document does is explain to the public what the CDB meeting is all about, and that you hear quasi-judicial and legislative cases and what those differences are. And then it really walks through preparing a citizen if they want to participate in the hearing. And it tells them how to ask for party status. It tells them then what their rights are, what it means, because unfortunately a lot of people don't understand what their rights and role is if they have party status. So this will do that. It explains how to prepare for it, explains to them what competent substantial evidence it is, so that they hopefully can present to you a solid argument. It also explains to them what their rights are with cross-examination and what they can and can't do during cross-examination, and then again their closing remarks, not a new opportunity to provide evidence. The document goes on to explain that also people have a right just to participate in a public hearing, which does not give them rights to appeal. There's a little discussion on legislative matters, and then it specifies the process for appealing a case if someone wants to do that, and then, if they lose appeal, how to go on. So that's essentially what's here. I hope that, this will be helpful to people and help your meetings run smoother, and then help our residents participate more fully in the process.
Can I make one suggestion?
Sure.
And I think this is great, and I think it'll help a lot. I think it's still a little bit daunting for some people, perhaps, and maybe there's a simple decision tree that could be added to it. Do I live within 500 feet, or did I receive notice? Just something that says, if you answer yes, then carry on to here. If you answer no, then enjoy the show, kind of thing. I think something like that might make it real simple to then be able to reference everything that's in here in an efficient manner for somebody.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information,
And, we also think that we need to do maybe some additional reorganization or better use of headings. And then we want to have public communications help us, make it pretty,
Cool. Okay. Will there be a parallel document prior to it coming to them? And it may be there, and I just don't know what it is. Here's how a citizen can get involved with the process before it's approved by the planning department. I mean, where they could come in and say, well, I don't like this, or I don't. It would probably be a different document, maybe not in here, but to say that here I have a chance to come in and say, I don't think this is agreeable. I'd like to be on some type of footing with the developer. They know what they would do. I'd like to know, can I say this? It's too tall, or it's too ugly, or too much traffic, or something. And they could get their point in before it's all pretty well worked out between the city staff and the developer. There's process in there. I just don't know where it is.
that would probably be with the surrounding property owners being able to participate through the DRC process. They can't testify and give input, but they can work with the planner. I think the challenge is, though, for that part of the process is that people don't necessarily get notice for a CDB hearing until after the process. So I think that's where some of the disconnect can be in this process. But we definitely are going to be posting this on our website. There's also a Citizens Bill of Rights that was passed years ago, so we're hoping to build a little section of the Planning and Development Department's website to, provide citizens more accessible information about how to participate and at what points can they participate in. Obviously, when we do the DRC agendas, they do get sent to the neighborhood associations that are affected, so a lot of times people find out information that way. We also send notices to the Clearwater Neighborhoods Coalition, who can then also be a clearinghouse for information for the neighborhoods that participate. So my plan is once we finalize this, then we would take it to the CNC, present that to them, and educate there, and then hopefully that will, help people be better informed, and then they can disseminate that out to their neighbors.
Yeah, I like that. Obviously, the final product will be posted online.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
Is there a way to, instead of printing, like taking down trees all the time, but when we give out that notice for this meeting, to those, have a reference of whatever this appendix is, where they can find it or whatever in that notice so that they can look at it?
Yeah, we could talk about doing that. I mean, we provide a link to the page where you can find the agenda and all the materials with the agenda, so we could add another link. I will say that, the planners are really good about working with the neighbors, and Ella, you may be, I don't know if you ended up sending this out to people, no, because it was a draft. We didn't really want to disseminate it until you all have had a chance to look at it and give us your feedback on it, but it could be something that we just do when people contact us and have an interest or have concerns, that we would provide them this via email or, direct them to our website.
I think the Neighborhood Coalition is excellent.
Yeah, and I plan to go and present this to them once we get it finalized.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I have one question, Gina. Under cross-examination, the first paragraph, the last sentence, note that city employees who do not testify, such as the city attorney or board members, are subject to cross-examination. Should that say not? Or are we subject to cross-examination?
I'm trying to find where you were talking. No, note that city employees who did not, such as, yes, that should be, are not subject to.
Okay.
But I think this is a great document. I commend the city for preparing it.
Yeah.
It's been on my wish list a long time, so thank you.
Well, if you all are good, we'll try to improve it. Do you want me to bring it back before we finalize and disseminate, or are you comfortable with us running with the changes? And
I think I'd run as changes. My thought would be if we can all take a look at this relatively soon. If we see something, the
how about we
dialogue is open.
circulate it once we think we have a very final version, and then you can look at it, because we would like to get it up and running before the next meeting.
Sure, that sounds like a good
Okay,
idea.
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the board is adjourned at 3:19. Thank you.
Okay.